All right. Hey, last week, we're continuing our friendship series. We're talking about what does it mean to be a good friend and what does it mean to find good friends. We started a couple weeks ago with the idea that we ultimately need to have our identity in Jesus, that He needs to be central in order for us to not look at people as primary and try to find all of our hope and our affections in other people. We need to have those secure in Jesus. And then we can find good friends. We can be a good friend first by being available, by being humble and being transparent. And so if we're doing all of that, then the question is, how do we find good friends? What should we prioritize? Because the truth is this, the people that you walk with will determine the direction that you walk, right? Your friends will determine what you do and who you become in so many ways. So when I was in high school, I worked at a grocery store. I started working at Market Street. You guys ever been to one of those? Yeah, it was super fun. I started when I was 16. I started bagging groceries. It was such a job, right? It was so fun. And then as I got older, as I worked there, I got to be a cashier, which I hated even more because I had to stand in one place and I couldn't handle that. And so I kept working there, and then I would take off seasons when I would play football in high school. And then when I turned 18, I walked up to my bosses at Market Street and said, "Hey, I'm 18, I want a better job." And here's this weird thing that happens in life. When you turn 18, the possibilities just open so wildly because the world thinks you can work with heavy machines, right? It's super fun. And so they said, "Awesome, yeah, you're 18, let's put you in a different job, not in the front." So I got a job in the back of the store in the meat department, right? So you guys know where you buy steak and stuff? I got a job back there. And I would come in at the end of the night and I would clean. So I'd get this really big high-powered hose, spray a bunch of soap on stuff, and then spray it with water. It was super fun. And you had to be 18 because there were saws that could cut off your hand. It was crazy. But the first day I walked into the job, all right, I walked in, I was new, I didn't know what was happening, and there was this guy who was there to train me. And so we started working together, and he was showing me how everything works, what to do. When all of the, I'm going to call them the adults, left, when all the adults left, he said, "Hey man, are you hungry?" And I said, "Well, I'm an 18-year-old boy. The answer is always yes, right?" And so he said, "All right, come with me." And we walked up to the front to the meat counter, and he said, "Do you want a burger?" And I was like, "Yeah, but that's raw. What do you mean?" He was like, "Don't worry." He was like, "You want this one?" I said, "Sure." So he grabbed it, and then they did this weird thing. I don't know how safe it is, but I was 18, so it was whatever. So we took these little metal trays, and we put them onto, there's these machines that you wrap plastic with, and then there's a hot plate on it, all right? So they would take these metal trays, put it on the hot plate, and then cook food there, right? And so I watched this process happen, and I was like, cool, right? And then he said, "Here, it's done, let's go to the back." So we went back to the cooler, and in the cooler there were packages of buns and a thing of cheese, and he made up a burger for me, and we sat there and ate burgers. And I was like, this job is awesome, right? And then the next day I came in, I was still training. He goes, "Are you hungry?" And I was like, "Of course." So we went and ate burgers, right? A couple of days later, one of the guys was like, "Hey, do you want some steak?" And I was like, "Of course, who doesn't want steak?" So I ate steak every day. I went to this job for months. All of us, almost adults is what I'll call us, because that seems to make sense, would cook food and we would eat it, right? And that just felt so incredibly normal to me. But do you know what that technically is? Stealing. I didn't know that at the time or think about it at the time, or maybe I did and I didn't care. I'm not sure, right? But the people I was surrounded with, the people who I was constantly seeing on a day-to-day basis, did this thing, and I just stepped into it and went, I guess this is normal, and I didn't really think about it, right? The people we're surrounded by can influence us in so many different ways. In fact, Proverbs 13:20 says this, "The one who walks with the wise will become wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm." So if you walk with wise people, you will then become wise. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says this, Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. So even those of us who have good morals, who have their faith in Jesus, if we're surrounded by people, man, they can lead us different ways. A quote I heard a long time ago says, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." Right? Our friends determine who we become. Who we surround ourselves with has a huge impact on us. And so the question we're asking, how do we then, if we are a good friend, right? If we're available and we're humble and we're transparent, and Jesus is primary in our life, which hopefully is true for all of us. If it's not, let's keep talking. Talk to your leaders, right? That wasn't true for me in middle school. But if that's true, then how do you find some good friends? And so today, I want to talk about some things that we can prioritize as we look for friends. Right? And the first is, and I think the most important, is to prioritize character over everything else. And so last week we talked about the idea that Jesus should be central to your life, and then you should be available, humble, and transparent. That should be true of the people that you're trying to be friends with. Right? Hopefully, they know who Jesus is. And I say that because if someone knows who Jesus is, then they want to be like Jesus, and their morals and their character will come from him. They should be available, transparent, humble. Right? So you want to look for those in people. And what I'd ask you to do to start is evaluate your current friend group. Right? This isn't a judgy thing, but just like, what is your friend group like? What's the character of your friend group? My friends in middle school, we were all super mean to each other, right? We were only friends with each other because that's just who was there, and we played sports together, but we weren't nice to each other. We weren't lifting each other up. The character of my friend group wasn't one that I think was honoring Jesus, right? It was a place where you were just trying to survive and trying to put other people down so that you would feel better. Right? It was an individualistic group of dudes hanging out together, but we weren't like a friend group that was really helpful, right? And so you want to evaluate your friends and go, man, what is my friend group like? And can I shift in there? How do I prioritize character over everything? I'd also tell you to prioritize character over charisma, right? So you guys would use the word riz in a different way. But charisma, I'm talking about cool factor, about popularity, right? Someone's character is way more important than their social status. There's a lot of people who have a lot of popularity and a lot of charisma, and they're really cool, whose character, man, is not something that you need to be surrounded with. But I know the struggle when you walk into middle school, right? When you walk into the cafeteria, you want to be with the cool people, right? There's this pull of popularity of, man, I want to hang out with that person because it might make me cooler, but it also might make you a worse person, right? So look for the people who have high moral character, friends who are going to lift you up, who are going to encourage you, who are going to point you to Jesus. It doesn't matter, man, what their social status is. Some of the best friends you could have might not be the most popular at your school, but they're going to be the best group for you to follow Jesus. And I guarantee all of the adults in this room would take a couple close friends who are helping them walk with Jesus, who they're helping those people walk with Jesus. They would take that over popularity. Because popularity is fleeting, right? Being popular in middle school doesn't really do anything for the rest of your life. Being popular in high school doesn't really have an effect on your life. It seems important in the moment, but good friends are going to be so much more lasting. So prioritize character over everything else. Second, prioritize proximity. So as you're looking for close friends, look for the people who you interact with on a weekly, daily basis. Who's actually in those circles that you see? And I want to say that second because there's something that's happening in today's world where you connect with so many people online and you can have close friends who you never actually meet in person. And I'm just going to say it, I don't think that's helpful at all. People that we actually interact with face to face and we can read their body language, they can read ours, we can have good conversation with them. That's an important friendship. But people on the other side of a screen who we're never going to meet, that can only go so deep, right? If COVID taught us anything, it's that online interaction is never going to replace in-person interaction, right? Online church isn't as good as being here in person, right? It's just true. And so prioritize the people that you see on a regular basis, right? So notice people in front of you. And I want you to try and do that this week. When you walk into your classes, who are the people that you see on a weekly basis that maybe you don't actually talk to? Those could be people that God brings to you to be great friends, right? And then two, put yourself out there, right? This is the scary part of friendships, but like you're going to notice people around you. Man, start a conversation with them. What does it look like for you to talk with that person that you see in your class every day who you go, man, I see the way that they act. I think they have really good character in the way that they're treating other people, in the way they speak to the teacher, in the way that they're praying maybe, or they are part of this FCA club, right? I think they have good character. Maybe I could be friends with them. What does it look like for you to initiate a conversation? And then ask good questions, right? How many of you in a conversation, you sit there and you say, hey man, what's up? Not much, what's up with you? Hey, what do you like to do? Video games, me too, cool. And then you sit there and don't know what to say anymore, right? But what would it look like? Maybe I was talking to the boys on that. Girls, you're probably better at conversation, maybe? I don't know. But what does it look like to ask actual questions like, hey, what do you like? What are you into? What are your hopes for the future? What church do you go to? Right? Asking good questions and having good conversation. The older you get, what you're going to notice is that conversations aren't always super easy, and you have to learn how to have good conversations. So prioritize proximity. The people in your daily basis, reach out to them, initiate, start good conversation. And so you've prioritized character. You found some people who now, man, maybe they're of high moral character. You've reached out to them because they're in your weekly rhythm of life. And then prioritize consistency. The truth is that friendship takes time. But so often in our world, in the individual world we live in, when we reach any kind of conflict, we just kind of cancel stuff and we avoid it and we don't want to wade into hard stuff. But it takes a long time to make a friend. There's actually a report done by Psychology Today in 2018, and it says, it was called, How Do You Make or Maintain Friends? Which is a question all of us are asking, right? Even adults. But it says this: it takes 50 hours of interactions to move from acquaintance to casual friend. It takes 90 hours to move from casual friend to friend, and more than 200 hours to qualify as a good friend. 200 hours. That's a long time, right? So it takes consistency. It takes time in order to be good friends with someone. And sometimes you have to work through things as you're doing that, right? So then you want to prioritize accountability. We're going to run through these because we're low on time. Prioritize accountability. We live in an individual world where none of us, man, want to be told what we're doing is wrong because, you do you, I'll do me, it doesn't matter. But we want to have friends where our friends are trying to make us better. As our friends are running towards Jesus, we want them to help us run towards him. And so that might mean your friend says, hey, I noticed you did this, you shouldn't be doing that, right? And you should be that kind of friend also. Because at its nature, right, accountability calls us to who we're meant to be. And so you want to have some kind of accountability with your friends. The last thing you want is friends who are going to just sit passively while you make bad decisions. So you want friends who will call you out on things, and you also want friends who you can call out on stuff, and you guys can all be striving to be better together. You can be striving to follow Jesus together. So what does it look like to have accountability in your current friendships? My friendships in middle school had none. Really, most of our friendships were who can do the dumbest thing, and we can all laugh at it, right? That's where a lot of TV shows have actually started from, if you've ever watched any of those, right? Who can do the dumbest thing? Let's all laugh at it, right? But accountability can hold us all together. True accountability comes from a deep place of love and care for people. And as we hold other people accountable and they hold us accountable, man, deeper friendships can form. The next one is prioritize a shared purpose. Realize that friendship isn't just about you and it isn't just about that other person. It's about accomplishing what God has you here for. So look for people who are interested in serving, right? Who maybe serve here at church, who serve at their church, and jump in and serve together. Because shared experiences of serving can deepen a friendship and a bond. Every year after our mission trips, those mission trip teams come back and they are all very close friends because they spent a week together, they consistently spent time together, and they shared a purpose where they served God together. They did something that was bigger than them and a relationship that was deeper formed. And so find people in your life who you can share a purpose with. And the last thing I want to encourage you to do if you're looking for good friends is to pray. Prioritize prayer. It might seem silly, right? Like, oh, that's such a small thing, but it's one of the biggest things you can do. How often do you spend time praying for your friend group? Praying for the people who you're going to be surrounded with as you walk this life of middle school and some of you soon to be high school? How often do you pray for the group you're surrounded with? How often do you pray for your friends? Right? That they would know Jesus more. Middle school Kevin never did that. And so what could it look like for you to prioritize praying for those people that you're surrounded with? And so we want to prioritize character. We want to prioritize proximity, accountability, consistency, a shared purpose, and prayer. And if you do those things, if you wade into those just a little bit, you can start to find friends around you. And here's the truth. I don't know what your school's like, right? I don't know what your daily experience is like. I've been to many middle schools, and they're all a little bit crazy, right? And so you might be sitting here going, Kevin, nobody at my school loves Jesus and is a good friend. That might be true, but I would challenge you and say there are probably people in your school who do love Jesus and who want deep friendships like we talked about today. And also, weekly, you come into this room, and then you go and sit in a small group with leaders who are committed to you to consistently be here, and other people, peers in that group, who could be those good friends. What could it look like if this was a place where deep friendships were formed in your small group? And some of you want that, others of you aren't really sure. And so in small group, we're going to go talk, like what could it look like for this place to be a place with deep friendships where you came in and there was accountability, there was consistency. You guys are pushing each other to be better. You were praying for each other. And you knew that you could trust the people here because they were available, they were humble, they were transparent and real. And so let me pray for that, and then we're going to go to small groups to talk more. Jesus, thank you for today. Thank you for times where we can talk about friendship, God. I pray that each student in here would know that they are deeply loved by you, and they're deeply loved by their leaders and by us here at Bent Tree, and that this could be a place where they could have deep friendships. God, I pray for each student in here as they walk out of this room, they would be encouraged to find deeper friendships that could bring them to the foot of the cross, God. That as they walk in the paths of middle school and soon to be high school, God, that you would be the rock and the foundation, and they could build friendships on that would encourage them and point them to you. So Jesus, I pray for our conversation. I pray that you bless our leaders as they lead those. Thank you for this time. In your name we pray.